Oh, howdy! These are the bad boys that are supposed to help me suppress my past, and who wouldn't want that? Wait a second, this isn't a high enough dose to suppress my pain. Well, with the higher dose not coming in for a while longer, I guess I'll just have to talk about what I'm suppressing. Glance into my past, if you will. A Glance into the Past is a series where I want to take a look at a game or subjects within gaming that I find particularly interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean I have to discuss every nook and cranny of the game, but more or less what I enjoyed about said game, and maybe I'll throw in a few critiques as well. The first game to take on this treatment is one Resident Evil. Resident Evil 5 to be exact. Resident Evil was known for its fixed camera angles and emphasis on survival horror, but by the time 2002 rolled around, Capcom, the developer of Resident Evil, was looking for a change. See, Resident Evil started out on the original PlayStation back in 1996, holding the tried and true fixed camera angles and fixation on survival horror. From 1996 all the way to 2002, Capcom would release 12 games within the RE franchise. While not every game was set in the original style, some were in first person, and those weren't good. So it's safe to say change wasn't a bad idea. In January of 2005, a little known title by the name of Resident Evil 4 would not only change the series, but revolutionize the gaming industry. Resident Evil would evolve from its horror roots and take on a whole new third-person perspective. This was a much-needed change in my opinion. While games like Resident Evil 0 were good and helped refine the survival horror formula, it didn't matter because there were so many of them. Capcom was turning out these games like their lives depended on it, and whether the games were good or not didn't matter. There were just too many Resident Evil games, and the series looked as if it was headed for the destination of oversaturation. Not to mention, each game sold at retail price, so if your brain wasn't dead from all the survival horror, your wallet was. So, with Resident Evil 4 a critical and commercial success, what would happen next? You know why I mentioned the series was oversaturated and required a much-needed change? Yeah, that took 8 years. Imagine if it happened in 4. See, after the success of Resident Evil 4, Capcom knew they got something right, and just after a few months of RE4 being on the market, Capcom would unveil a new trailer for the next mainline game in the franchise. Released in the summer of 2005, I could see how this would excite any Resident Evil fan. It conveys Chris, from Resident Evil 1, stranded in the middle of Africa being chased by an unknown number of zombies, and just everything about this trailer screams Resident Evil, giving off the vibe of helplessness and no return, but still offering a glimmering chance of survival. But what did we get instead? Yeah, in 2007 a brand new trailer would release, conveying a totally different shift in tone compared to the first one. Then fast forwarding a few more years to March 5th, 2009 to be exact, RE5 would be put on store shelves to decent critical and commercial success. Even back in 2009, Resident Evil 5 struggled to reach the heights of its predecessor, so I'd like to take a look back and try to understand why Resident Evil 5 tends to be regarded as the weaker game. I think a great place to start is, well, the beginning of the game. Aforementioned Chris is traveling to a fictional region of Africa called Kajuji, where he's attempting to find a man by the name of Irving. He's also now a member of the BSAA, a bioterrorist group hellbent on stopping whatever the hell this is. I will say RE5 is still really impressive graphically, with detailed environments and overall just a great presentation. So, like the game before it, RE5's goal is to move from area to area, killing enemies with the occasional boss battle thrown into the mix. The game consists of tight, responsive controls that make it a joy to kill anything that moves, including your partner. Oh, did I forget to mention something by the name of Sheva? I honestly don't know how I could forget. Yep, Resident Evil 5's biggest addition to the series was adding co-op by the name of Huge Pain in the Ass. Sorry, I meant gigantic. Alright, I'm definitely overreacting a bit, but by God, how did Capcom let this happen? See, in normal couch co-op or online environment, the game works fine, and honestly, playing with a friend is the best way to go about the whole matter, but the AI Sheva was programmed with is just not it. Sheva's problems aren't immediately apparent, but over time she just does the weirdest things. Like, her AI is perfectly serviceable for getting out of the way of most enemy attacks, but other times it'll do the unexpected. But I found the solution to this problem. Just upgrade a machine gun and only give that to her. It works surprisingly well. While using this method, I'd usually just give her machine gun ammo and use the other 8 storage slots for ammo to my other guns. Speaking of storage slots, a real-time inventory system was also added to Resident Evil 5. A real-time inventory is a method of accessing all your weapons while playing the game. This approach to the inventory system was a necessary change due to the fact it was really the only way to add any tension back into RE5. See, before this, anytime you wanted to switch weapons or really access anything, a menu would pop up that also paused the game. Honestly, now that I think about it, this really didn't add any tension of any kind. It more or less seemed like it was added due to RE5's more action-heavy nature and the fact that multiplayer was such a big component as well. I mean, it would be fairly annoying to you or your friend if every time you wanted to manage your inventory, it paused the game. Okay, when I'm not bitching about the multiplayer, what else can I discuss to shine a more positive light on RE5?
This game feels more like Resident Evil 4.5.
I swear I thought I was done complaining. See, Resident Evil 5 feels more like Resident Evil 4 with a fresh coat of paint than a totally new and inventive entry in the RE series. Now, I don't mean it feels like a carbon copy, but sometimes I found myself saying, wow, this feels familiar. An example of this is the beginning of the game. It starts slow, introduces you to one of the infected in a cutscene, and then puts you into the action with a whole big-ass horde of them. Granted, some events occur in different orders or in a faster manner, but all in all end up in the same place, Saved by the Bell. One figuratively and one literally. Another perfect example of this is the character Irving. I don't care what anyone says, this man is just a great value version of Salazar, minus the quirky charm. Hell, if I was to pinpoint the difference between 4 and 5, it's the quirky charm or lack thereof. Resident Evil 5 takes itself way too seriously sometimes and not in a good way. Like sure, Resident Evil 4 had its moments where serious events occurred, but it always felt as if it was happening around Leon and not to him. A spot-on example of this is the plot of the game. Leon is tasked with saving the president's daughter. Only him. No one else is coming and no one else ever came. Sure, this is happening to Leon, but his mouth just spews a few cocky lines and then bing bang boo, she's saved. That's the tone as a whole for RE4. Bing bang boo. But Resident Evil 5? Yeah, there's no bing bang boo to speak of. I mean, with RE5 taking more steps towards action, it's easy to wonder why Capcom was pulling for a more action-oriented approach, even more so than RE4. At the time, serious, gritty multiplayer shooters were all the rage, so I guess Capcom thought it was a good idea to tangle with the biggest one. I'm looking at you, Call of Duty. Call of Duty was a booming franchise back in 2009 and was all the craze for all 12 to 15-year-olds, so how was Capcom gonna compete with this? Trick question, they couldn't. It's not that I don't think Capcom couldn't create something similar to Call of Duty, it's more like why would you pick Resident Evil of all series to do it with? Believe me, I understand that Resident Evil 5 and Call of Duty were still totally different, but you could see what Capcom was trying to pull. The real-time inventory, a more serious approach to narrative, and the co-op were a heavy swing in the direction of a more action-oriented experience in hopes that kids playing Call of Duty would jump ship over to Resident Evil. This is just weird in my opinion. Why not just create a new IP if you wanted to cash in on the Call of Duty / military shooter craze instead of risking one of your most respected properties? Sure, in the end it didn't damage the reputation, but you sure as hell came close.
And with that, what else is there to talk about? Oh yeah, the gameplay!
Okay, taking Resident Evil 4 out of the equation, how do I feel about Resident Evil 5 as a standalone experience? It's alright. Hell, I would even say the first few chapters are the game at its best. It's awesome to explore the environments presented and break open crates looking for more ammo or gold. And heck, Sheva was pretty useful once. She held a flashlight while I did pretty much everything else, but it's the thought that counts. Also, some of the bosses are a joy to encounter. The chainsaw guy is back, and on top of that, you fight this character Excella. She later turns into whatever the hell this is, and you gotta strike her down with the might of Zeus. Well, that's pretty much it. Originally releasing for PS3, Xbox 360, and PC, later receiving next-gen upgrades for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, it's a decent third-person shooter that struggled to innovate and bring new ideas to the table, but what it does accomplish is well done and worth at least one playthrough.
And with that, Resident Evil 5 is unsuppressed from my memory, and while it's safe to say it was a good game, it was never quite a great one, and at least in my eyes will always remain in the shadow of Resident Evil 4. And on that note, I finally got some more pills. These are our higher dose too, so hopefully I can suppress at least one more bad memory.